This is a spoiler review for the Mandalorian Season 2 finale, The Rescue. Keyword here is spoiler, so if you've not seen the episode, you have been warned. By some miracle, I was not spoiled as to what happens at the end of this episode. Thank goodness for that, just because it is truly something worth not spoiling at the end of this episode, and I will get to that towards the end of this review. So with this episode, The Rescue, we know what the plot was going to be for this final episode, which is the rescue attempt by the Mandalorian and his crew to save Grogu from Moff Gideon on that Star Destroyer ship. And so with that, it was all like, well, it was going to be another heist episode, which these heists, I've mentioned this in my previous episode reviews, that this show has done a whole lot of heist missions where it's going onto a ship, beating up some stormtroopers, getting some information, getting a person, getting an object or something, and then getting the hell out of there. What made this different, though, is obviously it's the entire crew that we've seen throughout this season 2 when it comes to Boba Fett, Fennec, Cara Dune. Even Bo-Katan came back in, which was a big surprise to see Bo-Katan come in for another episode, just because I thought that character was just going to be a one-off for that episode. But so I was surprised to see her come back for this final episode in season 2. So that was cool that she made her another appearance in this show. What made this heist mission something different and added a little bit more urgency, or a lot more urgency, was the added element of including the Dark Troopers. The Dark Troopers returned. They appeared in the episode 6 of season 2, the episode where they came in, took Grogu on that meditating rock and took him back to Moff Gideon. And the Dark Troopers, they're actually pretty intimidating. They have their sort of a mix between Iron Man, Darth Vader, and the Death Troopers that we saw in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And what's cool is that they're pretty intimidating, and you see what they can do, just one of them, when that one was just beating the shit out of the Mandalorian, and somehow he's able to get out of that situation. And then you see that there's just a whole army, just dozens upon dozens of Dark Troopers, to where if any of these things got out, it's like they would cause some major chaos. And what's good about that is the fact that we've seen in these heist missions, these stormtroopers, I mean, this is obviously nothing new, but they just get shredded to where it's just like comical. I mean, at some point with Star Wars and the stormtroopers, it's just like there's just no urgency, there's no sense of danger. It's just like, really, let's get beyond this. And thankfully the Dark Troopers were something that added a much needed element of danger to this episode and just Star Wars in general right here. And what's cool is that eventually, once the Mandalorian gets to Moff Gideon, we've seen this is like, well, is this kind of like an old black guy? What's he gonna do, even though he's got this darksaber? And he put up a really good fight against the Mandalorian, where they're both going back and forth. He's using sort of his metal spear, he's using his darksaber. It was a cool sort of back and forth, and it was a cool initial dialogue between the two. Moff Gideon, he ended up just being a really cool villain throughout this show, throughout this season, to where we only saw him for a little bit, the final episode of season 1. We see his presence throughout season 2, and yeah, the actor who did him, he just did a really good job. The writing on that character, it was a really sort of a different kind of Star Wars character, obviously, that we've seen in sort of live action. So Moff Gideon ended up being just a really cool villain, and even towards the end, how he's still talking shit, even though he's sort of defeated and in handcuffs or whatever. That was great stuff also. So yeah, this episode, it still had a lot of the stuff that you would see from the heist missions that we've seen throughout Mandalorian season 1 and season 2. The same stuff of going through hallways, beating up stormtroopers. This had the added element of Dark Troopers, that kind of stuff, but it still was good. Then we come to the ending of the episode, to where initially it seemed like the major thing was going to be the Mandalorian having to fight Bo-Katan, who apparently needed to fight someone who has the Darksaber to get it back. So it seemed like the Bo-Katan was going to have to fight the Mandalorian, but that quickly got overcome by the Dark Troopers coming back. An army of Dark Troopers just coming back, invading sort of the hull of the ship, to where they were coming into where the Mandalorian, Cara Dune, and all of them were holed up in sort of that office hole, or just the main hub of the ship. And it was just like, oh man, they coming after him now. And you did have to wonder, like, how the hell are they going to get out of this situation? Just because one of these Dark Troopers, or just at least just if you had a few of them, would just rip the whole crew to shreds. And so the fact that there was dozens upon them, it was just like, what the hell is going to happen next? Then obviously came the thing that made the whole internet community and fanboys just jizz their pants, to where they look out the ship window and they see an A-Wing come in. And immediately, in my mind, I was just like, an A-Wing? No way. Because this is coming from the perspective of someone who had just watched The Rise of Skywalker a few days ago. So when you see an A-Wing come in, you think to yourself, wait a minute, no way, they actually gonna try and do this? So that A-Wing comes into the ship, a figure comes out in a black sort of cloak or whatever, and it's just like, no, No way. And one of the characters, I think it was Bo-Katan, says it's a Jedi. And I thought to myself, well, are they bringing Ahsoka Tano back? Because is she making a reappearance after her great appearance in episode 5 of this season? Then that figure comes out, takes out a green lightsaber, and everyone, the whole internet community, realizes what's going on. And in my head, I'm just going like, no effing way. No way, they actually gonna pull this off. They're actually doing this to where that figure comes out. He's doing a bunch of Jedi moves. He's slitting Dark Troopers in half. He's just massacring that entire army of Dark Troopers by himself. And it's just like, no way. I never thought I would see something like this happen in a Star Wars show, or just in period, just in live action in general. This character come back and start doing this stuff again. To where that whole sequence, it was, if I was able to record my reaction, I was absolutely standing up, just flipping out. The moment I realized what was going on, I just had to stand up and just be like, no way, this is actually going on right here. To where once that sequence is over, that character comes into the room where all the Mando and all the other crew were in, and he takes off his hood, and it's a Luke freaking Skywalker, a young Luke Skywalker, because this show takes place after Return of the Jedi, shortly after Return of the Jedi, to where it looks like young Luke Skywalker from that era of time, to where it's just like, no way, this is absolutely unfreaking believable what they're doing right here in a Star Wars show, let alone just live action in general, bringing back a young Luke Skywalker in an extended sequence like this, something that was just completely unexpected, something I don't think anyone could have ever seen coming when they announced they were doing a show, The Mandalorian. This was absolutely incredible. Now, obviously, they did some digital work on his face to make him look more like how Luke Skywalker did, to where you could look at his face and see that there was some digital work done. But I'm not going to complain about that too much, because it's, for the most part, looked pretty good. And the fact that they were able to get sort of a good representation of young Luke Skywalker from Return of the Jedi, absolutely unbelievable. To where that whole sequence, the way they bring Luke Skywalker in, something that's completely unexpected, the way they brought back a hero of a generation, an entire generation, just so goddamn cool the way they did this. And it almost feels like them sort of making up with the fact of how Luke was treated in the sequel trilogy. That's a big reason that a lot of people hate the sequel trilogy, specifically The Last Jedi, how Luke Skywalker was handled. Me, I always just had a problem with how Luke went out, the way they used his death as sort of like a surprise moment, like a gotcha moment. I really didn't like that at all. But to give him a sequence like this, a young Luke Skywalker post Return of the Jedi, in all of his sort of Jedi glory, absolutely unbelievable. And not only is it Luke Skywalker, but freaking R2-D2 pops up. So that's just the icing on the cake of what was just an unbelievable, just surprise return of Luke Skywalker. To see a young Luke Skywalker and R2-D2 come into the scene, just so goddamn cool. It was magical, is the best way to describe it. Something that rivals, is basically the equivalent of that Darth Vader scene we saw in Rogue One towards the end. But this was even better than that, just because this is something that a young Luke Skywalker, absolutely unbelievable. So with this whole sequence, obviously the thing is that Baby Yoda, when the Jedi he was calling out to on that whole meditation thing, he was calling out to Luke Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker is the one that came in to sort of save the day, and that was great. And what was cool about the end of the sequence, the end of this episode in general, was the fact that it did, after this whole sort of mindgasm of seeing young Luke Skywalker, it did put the focus back on the Mandalorian and Grogu, to where the Mandalorian tells Grogu that this is who he's got to go with now, Luke Skywalker, to be with not his own race, but just his own sort of Jedis and stuff like that. To where at their sort of ending moment, it was great the fact that the Mandalorian took off his helmet to say goodbye to Grogu. You know something big is going down whenever the Mandalorian takes off his helmet. We had just seen him take off his helmet. The previous episode, that prison break episode, or whatever that was, when they were on the Stormtrooper base or something. That was obviously monumental to show how much Grogu meant to him, that he would take off his helmet to sort of achieve a mission. And then the fact that he just took off his helmet in front of all these people just to say goodbye to Grogu, to look into his eyes. It's a truly magical moment to see the relationship between these two, because that's obviously been the heart of this show with season 1 and season 2, the relationship between the Mandalorian and Grogu. So that was just absolutely spectacular to see, an amazing moment, amazing emotional moment to cap off what was just a mindgasm of seeing a young Luke Skywalker return in this sequence. So ultimately, throughout most of this episode, I was like, all right, this is another really good episode. I was really enjoying it. It wasn't quite a 10 out of 10 like how I thought the previous episodes were, where they just were just like on sort of another level. But when it comes to the ending of this episode with a young Luke Skywalker coming in, saving the day with R2-D2, and then an ending between Luke Skywalker, between the Mandalorian and Grogu, yeah, this was another spectacular episode because of that finish. That finish, the way they finished, that was just something no one ever could have seen coming in a show like this, or just any kind of Star Wars show, just to bring back a young Luke Skywalker in an extended sequence like this. So yeah, ultimately 10 out of 10 for this episode. That was just an amazing sequence to see the way things went down in this episode. Then there's the actual true ending of the episode, which is a post-credit scene. And during the actual credits, I had gone out of the room a little bit, and I was just still flipping out and thinking about what the hell I had just seen. Then after the credits, I heard another scene was going on, and I run back into the room, and then sure enough, you see a scene that's Boba Fett returning to Jabba the Hutt's place. There's a new guy sitting on the throne. He takes out the guy. He's sitting out, Boba Fett sitting on the throne, and then it just cuts to a blank screen and the title that says The Book of Boba Fett coming in December 2021, which is unbelievable to think about, that already we know exactly what the next show we're going to get in this universe, a Mandalorian season 3, along with the Book of Boba Fett, a Boba Fett centered show. So it goes to show how far they've come with their plans. Originally they wanted to do a Boba Fett solo movie. Now we're going to get a Disney Plus TV series about that. And yeah, that just seems absolutely amazing with what they did with the character in this show right here. So ultimately, the Mandalorian season 2 was a huge improvement on season 1. Just unbelievable improvement. Because season 1, I thought was solid. It was like a 7 out of 10. But I just felt like it didn't do that great a job with sort of the story consistency throughout all the episodes. There was a lot of filler and just a lot of like lack of momentum when it comes to the story through line. This show, this season 2, did a great job to where they had a couple episodes at the beginning where it's all like, okay, the story's kind of meandering around. But once things really kick into high gear, like post like episodes 3 or whatever, it was just unbelievable the way they improved upon the story. The visual effects were a lot better. The storytelling was a lot better. Unbelievable episodes like the live action debut of Ahsoka Tano. You got Bo-Katan making an appearance. Obviously, the incredible new version they did of Boba Fett, and then the unbelievable surprise what they did in this final episode, as well as continuing to build on the relationship between the Mandalorian and Grogu, and it seemingly reaching its conclusion in this episode. So yeah, season 2 was just a huge improvement on season 1. Season 1 was like a 7 out of 10 for me. This episode, I mean, this season, the last 4 episodes were like a 10 out of 10 for me. In terms of the entire like season 2, is probably like a 9.5 out of 10 for me. Season 2 was just fantastic, great stuff. It was an unbelievable mix of an original Star Wars story and characters with the Mandalorian and Grogu, and then mixing in stuff from obviously the animated shows with Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and obviously the original trilogy with Luke Skywalker coming in. So it really shows the potential of what they can do with Star Wars now in a TV format, almost making it its own sort of cinematic universe with everything connecting in a way, and it coming to sort of a conclusion or sort of a point in this series right here. So yeah, fantastic what they did with the Mandalorian season 2. It'll be interesting to see what season 3 is going to be about, just because we've seen now that it looks like the story between the Mandalorian and Grogu has reached its ending. But we saw in the previous episode, which did not have Grogu, that they can still do pretty kick-ass episodes, even if there is no Grogu anymore. Obviously, that'll hurt in terms of merchandise, but I'm hopeful that they can still do good things with this show going forward, because there is going to be a season 2. Or season 3. But ultimately, season 2, a great improvement on season 1. It was just a fantastic show overall. So that'll do it with my chapter 16 review and my just review of season 2 as a whole. If you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching.